Welcome to the Vital Spirit podcast. I'm Dr. Kelly Livingston, a naturopathic physician and your guide to a new health reality, one that connects body, mind, and spirit. Together, we'll dive deep into the art and science of holistic healing. Through working with hundreds of women through midlife transitions, I've discovered something profound. Most of our physical and emotional challenges are rooted in a maladaptive stress response. And true healing begins when we regulate our nervous system. Each episode will explore complex health topics in simple, empowering ways, uncover the deeper wisdom within each of us, and share practical tools for nervous system regulation to help you awaken your vital force and create lasting wellness. So, if you're ready to reconnect with yourself, your health, and your purpose, let's begin this journey together so you can experience life more fully human and deeply healed. There are moments in life when everything familiar dissolves, when the supplements that once steadied you, the diet and lifestyle that once worked, suddenly don't anymore. Or maybe you experience a major traumatic loss. You're waking before dawn, your heart's beating fast, you're wondering, who am I becoming? What is this new anxiety? Or why is depression knocking at my door when everything about my life looks good on the outside? I should be happy. This isn't failure, it's initiation. Maybe some of you went through something like this in your 20s or 30s, or maybe as you navigate perimenopause and menopause in your 40s and 50s, this is the first time that you've gone through this descent. Oftentimes when we have experienced a major life loss or traumatic event, we can experience this dark night of the soul at a young age. Very often it is the first time as we're entering midlife that we've really had to sit and reflect around what is our body trying to tell us? What is our psyche trying to tell us? Maybe you're asking yourself, what's my purpose? Why don't I feel any joy anymore? What are my core values? How can I show up as the best version of myself for my family? For me, I've had a few traumatic stressors in my own life and my history, and they certainly have triggered some of these existential crises for me. So today I'm sharing the framework of the sacred descent and how to navigate the health awakening journey that is perimenopause. I'm Dr. Kelly Livingston, and this is the Vital Spirit podcast. Today we are diving into the depths that maybe some of you have never really explored before. So buckle up, I'm excited, and it's not all depressing, but we are going to be talking about the dark night of the soul. So mystics called the sacred descent the dark night of the soul. Alchemists called it negredo, the blackening before rebirth. In my language, in the Vital Spirit method, it's the sacred descent of midlife, the portal that every woman walks through where her biology, psyche, and spirit are essentially conspiring for truth. We've talked before about how when patients come into my office, essentially patients are coming to be known, but patients have to be ready to be authentic and vulnerable and see their truths, and I have to create a safe space that allows for this to happen. So I might sit with a new patient and ask, if I had a magic wand, what would we fix? But I also know that there is so much more to this journey than just fixing a symptom. Carolyn Mace teaches us that the dark night is when the ego's contracts dissolve so that the soul can fulfill its sacred contract. And Carl Jung reminds us that there is no coming to consciousness without pain, right? Clinically, I watch this unfold in labs often before a patient ever names it. We see cortisol flattening, we see ferritin dropping, we see thyroid conversion slowing, our guts are inflamed, sleep is fractured, and no longer are we finding rest or relaxation in our day. And our body is essentially saying, I can't keep living this way. I like to think about this as our biology mirroring our psyche. It's the moment where our soul asks our cells to listen. Our soul is saying, hey, hello, nobody's listening to me here. So our biology in my world is inextricably linked with this other aspect of growth and development, essentially. As I mentioned, there have been a few seasons of my own life where I've met this darkness. I've been exhausted. I've had burnout. I've been a single mom, a doctor, a woman whose go to plan for mental health and well being stopped working. I've had to get really clear around daily habits that were holding me back, mindset shifts, right? Depression returned like an old language that I thought I'd forgotten, and it's not always easy. It is definitely not always comfortable. And no amount of discipline or green juice could touch it, right? When I've been through experiences like this when I was younger, I didn't realize necessarily what was going on. So I'm hoping that this episode today is helpful for some of you. And essentially, the dissolution that's going on in the dark night of the soul of everything false is so that something more authentic can emerge. In our lives as women, this phrase, the dark night of the soul, often describes the profound psychological and spiritual crisis that can arise in perimenopause and menopause. Rather than treating intense symptoms as only physical hardships, this lens really looks to understand them as a transformational process of death and rebirth, as a passage that can reveal deep self realization and spiritual awakening. The initial phase of this process is very frequently felt as a betrayal phase. So you might feel like you're coming undone, disoriented. You don't feel like yourself anymore, as if cast off from a familiar shoreline of what you know to be your life experience into a dark ocean of unknownness. And this is not comfortable. The old ways of coping no longer work, and this can be a perfect storm when layered in with midlife realities, maybe loss of loved ones, relationship strains, and career upheaval. It is just a time where we have to find new tools to navigate this ocean. At the heart of this process is essentially dismantling our identity or belief systems that no longer serve us. For many, this includes surrendering the role of the fertile mother, the younger self, and really dismantling all of that can feel so terrifying, right? We don't want to let go of our youth. We want to remain vital. We want to remain relevant. This is natural. And very often, this dismantling arrives with real human symptoms like feelings of emptiness or meaninglessness, intense despair and sadness, questioning beliefs and purpose in life, increased anxiety and fear around the future, rumination, loss of joy in previously pleasurable activities. Sound like depression, right? It's very commonly that I will see an overlap here. But from a spiritual perspective, this disruption is not random. It's essentially a catalyst, an initiatory current or initiatory energy that can move you forward toward your truer self. You're not going to stay in this discomfort, right? Many traditions and practitioners read symptoms in this way. So, hot flashes can be seen as a purification fire, burning away old energies to clear space for new beginnings. Energy shifts and mood swings are essentially our soul recalibrating, mirroring life's ebbs and flows as you move toward this inner wisdom. As hormones shift, as women get more clear on maybe what their gut instincts are, right? They're reporting this heightened intuition. The veil between seen and unseen is feeling thinner and thinner. And across lineages, this passage is really honored as an initiation into the wise woman or crone archetype, where we're no longer defined by reproduction, by fertility, but we're really stepping forward as guides, as healers, as bearers of wisdom, and offering to our community a new kind of leadership through this transformation. So you can't go through this process without it feeling like an initiation. So the way that I like to think about navigating this is through practice and embracing some of that chaos, letting the turbulence be part of the process, not necessarily a problem to erase. So we do have to practice some self-reflection, getting quiet, journaling, meditating, being mindful so that some of the insights that are brewing or trying to come up can really land in our body and we can feel them so we can hear them and do something about them. It's a time when we are releasing the old. We are retiring old patterns that don't serve us, old belief systems, even relationships that no longer serve us, so that we can further listen and hear our intuition. We can let our inner voice be our guide. And through that process, we are finding our purpose. We are reclaiming old passions or welcoming new ones that are more aligned with our authentic self and our goals. So, this is the landscape in which our clinical and alchemical work unfolds through midlife. So, when I first meet a woman, I might be looking at her labs, and looking through lab lens, I see a lot of familiar patterns. I see the HPA axis collapsing from years of sympathetic overdrive. I see depleted neurotransmitters or tired mitochondria. And outwardly, we might experience fatigue, weight gain, hair loss, anxiety. But inwardly, it is our psyche saying, no more half life, no more of this, right? So every crucible or container of transformation needs three things: we need heat, containment, and faith. So the heat is the discomfort. Metaphorically, heat represents the difficult trials or challenges and pressures of life. And these can include personal suffering, betrayal, periods of intense self doubt. These trials essentially are testing our character and our beliefs and pushing us to our limits. And containment is the setting or the practices, the rituals that hold you. Our physical crucible needs to be really strong and heat resistant to withstand some of these extreme temperatures and pressures of transformation without melting, right? So this might be a specific setting, a period of time. It might actually look like the vital spirit method, which I designed essentially to be a container for transformation. And this container is preventing collapse, but allowing for the work to be held in a space and time. And faith is remembering that darkness is not punishment, it's preparation. So we have to have faith in the process. It is the element that elevates this concept from a physical process to a spiritual or personal growth process. In a spiritual context, faith is the conviction that this trial has a purpose and will ultimately lead to a positive transformation, and that we're not going to be destroyed by the fire, but refined by it. In a more personal or secular context, faith can be interpreted as hope or perseverance or trust in oneself and one's values. So it's the core belief that allows us to hold on to our integrity during adversity or during difficult processes of transformation. So our alchemy begins in the body, and our body speaking to us with signs and symptoms. And that is the true furnace, or essentially the source of the heat, the catalyst for this transformation. So let's talk a little bit more about the anatomy of this descent and why I start all patients working on the gut brain axis. So the gut is where the old dies, like literally and metaphorically, right? The microbiome is going to shift under this chronic stress. If we have excess inflammation coming in, then we're going to see things like serotonin plummeting. We might see that low ferritin causing that physical low mood and depletion. We might see our thyroid underfunctioning, right? We've talked about these in previous episodes. And this is essentially the negretto of the body, which again is that alchemical phase of that first step of transformation, also known as the dark night of the soul. So our nervous system is going to mirror this descent. So we're going to go from potentially sympathetic overdrive, right, that excess fight or flight, into what could be looked at more of a dorsal shutdown, dorsal vagal shutdown. And then we're going to re-regulate and come back to ventral regulation through this process. So I love pulling in the language of polyvagal theory to this because it's really defining this journey from survival to safety and connection again. So it's more of a biological map of the spiritual rebirth that you can feel in your body. You can feel sympathetic fight or flight, and you can feel dorsal shutdown. And in that first pillar of the vital spirit method, because I am trying to provide a container for this, we are working through pillar one, recognize and remove. We're working on naming what's dying, what's not serving us, what are our toxic beliefs, what are the stress patterns that are no longer serving us. Do we have gut dysbiosis that's inflaming our whole body? Are we people pleasing? Are we overfunctioning and exhibiting perfectionistic behaviors and tendencies? So you can't ascend without this descent. healing doesn't start with necessarily fixing, but surrendering to some of this process. We are going to have to recognize and remove what is not working. As you start to think about going through this process yourself, because it probably feels really daunting because I'm talking at you about this, just take a moment and just get quiet with yourself and ask, is there something in my life that's asking to be released so that something truer can take its place? Right? We can't bring in the new things that will serve us on our health awakening journey if we are still holding on to the things that are no longer going to serve us. So, to stay steady inside this container, we do anchor in those seeds of health, those regular rituals that hold the psyche in a regulated body. So, we're going to have times where we get triggered, and this is really hard work, right? And it's going to feel uncomfortable. But when we hold our daily routine with reverence and we focus on those daily seeds of health, restoring circadian rhythm, focusing on our sleep, making sure that we carve out time for rest and relaxation, using food as medicine, right? Stabilizing blood sugar, taming inflammation, working on embodiment and moving emotions through the body. All of this is essentially telling our body you are safe to go through this process and it's not going to burn you down. So each seed that we work on is both ritual and regulation. So we might be tracking data, we might be tracking labs and symptoms, but we're making sure that every day we're giving our body this ritual and we're giving our body regular inputs that are leading us on our health awakening journey. So labs might show us, again, low ferritin or high HSCRP indicating inflammation or a sluggish thyroid. But through these daily impactful rituals, we are translating these numbers that we might be focused on in the beginning into lived change and into habits that now become our lifestyle and become essentially who we are. We are becoming healthy. So every single small act, a castor oil pack, a mindful meal, breath work before a stressful meeting is telling the body, I am safe to heal. I had an amazing visit with a patient yesterday, and we had initially worked on chronic constipation and SIBO. And now we're moving on to working toward fertility. She just got married. And she was saying how she remembers every day when she's feeling tense or stressed throughout her day. Okay, I'm just going to take a minute. I'm going to breathe, remind myself that I'm safe. And she said that's been so impactful to her daily life. It's not that complicated, but it is really profound. And what she was starting to see is essentially new archetypes emerging. So in Jung's world, and I love talking about depth psychology, individuation is the goal of the dark night. So becoming who you truly are beneath conditioning. So maybe part of her patterns or maybe some perfectionism that she was exhibiting in the workplace was creating some tension in her body. And so as she starts to take those moments to breathe and notice when she's holding tension, she can also start to recognize some of the patterns that are no longer serving her. So common archetypal deaths that I see in midlife are the healer who burns out saving everyone else, the mother whose children no longer need her in the same way, the maiden who equates worth with appearance or approval, the warrior who's tired of the fight. You might see yourself in some of these, right? And the emerging archetypes through this transition, the wise woman, the mystic, the queen, the sage, the crone who creates, they embody discernment, purpose, self-trust. So you're moving from archetypes that might ask, why is this happening to me? So you're moving from external focus or external blame into what is this teaching me, an internal locus of control. You're shifting from personality patterns to soul recognition. And along this journey, working through the pillars of the Vital Spirit method, that's when my work with patients is transitioning from maybe more focused on functional medicine or labs to more meaningful medicine and terrain work and vitalistic naturopathy, nervous system regulation, nutrition, spiritual direction as we work together. Because we really can't have those conversations if, again, you come in and you have these extreme physical symptoms. So we do start working on that physical plane of existence first. Okay, so that's a little dark and complex, right? So, what happens after this? So, the next phase essentially is illumination when light returns. So, after dissolution comes purification in alchemy. And the nervous system in this phase is beginning to find more coherence. Your gut has restored its microbial balance, sleep, digestion are better. So, you feel a lot better in this phase. And this is usually around pillar 2 and 3 of the vital spirit method, where we're working on regulating and restoring healthy nervous system responses, HPA axis regulation, circadian rhythm. We're replenishing and rejuvenating. Remember, we're working on hormones and neurotransmitters, and our vitality is really beginning to come back. Spiritually, this is the albedo, the whitening or the cleansing light after the dark. And Carolyn Mace would say this is the moment when grace enters, which I love. And Jung would call it integration of the shadow. So I love working with patients on some of these shadow work processes. And again, that's really hard to do if we're struggling with a physical symptom that's essentially distracting us from that work. And the integration of this all is what I like to refer to as living fully human and deeply healed, or the rubedo. And this is all about embodiment and radiance, and it's that final alchemical stage. And you're no longer chasing healing, but you're living as wholeness itself. So you're doing things that are good for you, and the things that are good for you are things you want to do. This is such an amazing phase to get to. At this point, physiologically, your system feels a lot more resilient, so you can ride some of those sympathetic fight or flight waves without collapsing into the dorsal shutdown phases. You can hold grief and joy together in the same breath. And here's where we do focus on hair, skin, nails, and spirit, which you've heard me talk about before. And I like to think about that external visible glow as a reflection of your inner coherence. So you stop seeking to feel like the old you or feel like yourself again, but you really are starting to inhabit the woman you've become and feel even better than you've ever felt before. One of my main goals in working with women is to educate and enlighten women around the fact that to deeply heal, to experience life more fully, there is a phase that is often uncomfortable, but it doesn't have to break you. I have felt in multiple times in my life like I was on the verge of my breaking point, and I want to share that and be vulnerable and admit that I have been in the depths of this dark night of the soul more than one time, but it didn't break me. It actually transformed who I am. And what I want is to offer that to you. It's been my honor to guide so many women on this journey. And one of the things that I've discovered is that inside every descent, inside every dark night of the soul, there are 3 lights that help us find our way back. And I talk about these 3 P's of perimenopause with patients. And those 3 P's are patterns, power, and presence. So that might sound really simple, but they're the architecture of transformation within the vital spirit method, that container that I've created. So patterns are about seeing our story. Your body is always talking. We just have to learn its language. Your labs tell one story, right? Estrogen, progesterone balance, ferritin levels, inflammation levels, food allergies, cortisol curves. Your cycles, your energy rhythms, your emotional triggers, they tell you another story. And beneath all of that, there's an archetypal rhythm. There's this pattern of creation, destruction, rebirth. And when we track these patterns with intention, we're no longer chasing symptoms, but we're really honoring their wisdom. So one of the first things I'm doing with a patient is I'm looking for patterns in their story, in their medical history. I'm looking for patterns in their family history. I'm looking for patterns in their daily life and how they respond to stress. And I'm definitely looking for patterns in their lab work, right? And these patterns are the most important pieces of information. Pattern recognition is the first step. So a midlife cortisol crash isn't random. It's the physiological echo of overgiving, of serving others before self. A flood of estrogen and tears before your period or dropping progesterone isn't your body failing. It's your inner remembrance that you need to release things. You need to emotionally process. You need to be with feelings. Carolyn Mace teaches that when we witness our patterns without judgment, we're reclaiming choice around them. So we don't have to continue to do the same thing all the time. And when Jung talks about this individuation process, it's essentially becoming the conscious witness of these unconscious patterns. Patterns are the map. They're going to show us where we need to intervene. And that brings me to power. So where are you placing your power? Into supplements, quick fixes, some lady on the internet, or the next expert promising balance? I know that I fall into this category if you found me on the internet. Or are you putting power back into the truth that your body knows how to heal when you listen? The body heals, right? In clinic, I hand women their labs, or I screen share in a virtual consult, and I say, let's go over these lab by lab, piece by piece together, because this empowerment grows when you understand your numbers. So iron isn't just ferritin, it's vitality. Progesterone isn't just a hormone, it's peace, it's calm. Your omega-3 index, it's not a data point, it's how resilient your brain and nervous system are. When we outsource our power and we say, oh, that pill's going to fix me, or oh, that expert's going to tell me what to do, it keeps you in a loop of dependency. And reclaimed power births discernment. It births critical thinking around our daily choices. And that's the shift from mechanistic medicine to vitalistic healing. And power fuels this journey. Where you place your power on your health journey is of the utmost importance. You can take back your power with knowledge around this, and you can say, I choose to participate in my rebirth. And that brings me to presence and returning to the body, because presence is medicine. It's the bridge between thoughts and tissues, between intention and chemistry. Are you living in your body, or are you managing it from the neck up? Presence means letting breath drop into the belly. It's pausing before a meal to notice gratitude instead of scrolling. It's catching the moment that your jaw tightens, right? And choosing softness and release instead. Physiologically, this presence looks like vagal tone. It's heart rate variability. It's coherence. It's shifting from fight or flight into parasympathetic flow. That's why we talk so much about parasympathetic nervous system tools. So every seed of health that we're working on, every ritual is a cue of this safety so that we can be present. And healing happens in this presence. So patterns show us the map. They make us aware of where we need to intervene. Power is everything. It fuels your journey. And presence is what will essentially keep you on the path and provide a healing state to your body and mind. Together, these three will turn the chaos of midlife into your health awakening journey. So let's look a little bit beyond biology and let's step into the quantum. I want us to really remember through this conversation that belief becomes your biochemistry. And we're really working on remembering that health is created from the inside out. It was so perfect that I was part of a conference over the weekend called Impact Lives, a wonderful event that I've done for many years. And one of the speakers was sharing this idea, this quantum reframe of be, do, have. So I think that this is one of the secrets that most people miss about real healing. And to reach the next level of health, we have to realize the quantum, right? So what does that mean? Well, thoughts are magnetic and beliefs are actual electricity. They're electrical in our body. They broadcast through every nerve and they shape the chemistry of our body at the cellular level. I know I've shared Candace Pert's work before on the podcast, and I highly recommend her book, The Molecules of Emotion, so you can understand this concept further. But essentially, your cells are eavesdropping on your thoughts. And the speaker today shared this quote that I want to share with you. And it's a quote from James Allen. And he wrote that man becomes what he thinks about most of the time. And science agrees with this. So mindset really modulates gene expression through all those neuroendocrine pathways we talked about in our HPA axis deep dive. So you've got the HPA axis, the immune system, your mitochondrial energy output. They all respond to perception. They all respond to mindset. And our mindset and our thoughts are based on our beliefs. So before we can do the healthy things, before we can be healthy, We have to be the healthy consciousness that makes that possible. So that's the true order of operations: be, do, have. If we want health, if we want to have health, we can't have health without being someone who believes we can be healthy and without doing the healthy things, right? It's not have, do, be. Be the woman who knows healing is possible. Then do the daily practices that align with that knowing: your daily seed rituals, your movement, your nourishment, getting your labs done, right? Then you have health. It's not as an achievement, but as the natural consequence of coherence, essentially. When we live in that old sequence, have, do, be, we wait for the perfect labs or the perfect weight before we allow ourselves to feel joy. We wait for that expert to tell us what to do. But when we flip it, be, do, have, joy becomes the frequency that creates the physiology. And the belief that we can be healthy is the foundation for all of this. And this growth process, this dark night of the soul, this descent, this health awakening journey, it's going to be inconvenient. This is a phrase that I hear a lot in my yoga practice. It's a phrase that I hear a lot of my mentors saying, that growth can be and will be inconvenient. It will be wildly uncomfortable at times. Each expansion essentially threatens the identity that you built to survive, right? We're very often, when we're operating on autopilot, it is to survive. We are motivated to not die, to keep ourselves safe. Ideally, we're also motivated by love. But as you're moving through this process, your nervous system is going to whisper, this new level feels unsafe. This is not familiar. And that's why regulation and nervous system practices always come first, because safety makes this expansion sustainable. And holding yourself in a container like the Vital Spirit method makes it feel a lot safer too, because health does get to be easy eventually. This is not naive. These are not just words I'm saying to get you to become a patient. That's not why I'm here. Health being easy is a truth. If you remove the obstacles to cure and you give your body what it needs, health is just a byproduct of that. I have seen this year after year after year, patient after patient after patient. Health being easy is a neuroplastic truth. So it's measurable when we look at things like neurofeedback or biofeedback, when we're measuring things like heart rate and we're seeing, oh, my body is aligning and I am healthy now that I've listened to my body and given it what it needs. It's what happens when the mind and body are in alignment. When you think healthy thoughts, you act from that belief, and you feel gratitude before the outcome. You're teaching yourselves this language of wholeness. From a clinical standpoint, this isn't mystical. It's actually measurable medically and scientifically. So you will see cortisol curves regulate. You will see improved DHEA or stress resilience. You will see improved heart rate variability, normalized blood sugar, lower inflammation. And from a spiritual standpoint, it's remembering that consciousness is the first medicine. The dark night of the soul is not a punishment. It's the point in evolution where the body, the mind, and the soul synchronize around truth, around authentic meaning and purpose in life. But we have to strip away the illusions. We have to strip away this belief that health has to be earned through struggle, or that person's just healthy and I'm not because my genes are unhealthy, or my parents gave me this or that. That's just not true. Genetics are only one part of the puzzle. We have the whole world of epigenetics and all the things that we do and put in our body and the way we move. This all impacts how our genes are going to be expressed. So you can be the light in your own cells. You can do the rituals that honor that light, and you can have the vitality that follows with that alignment. It's not that complicated. Now, I say it's not that complicated because when you start to implement some of these daily routines and rituals, you will see that some of them are very simple and they become part of who you are. You become someone who drinks lemon water in the morning. It's not just a habit, it is part of who you are and what your body is asking for every day. And remember that every descent has its arc, and it's always darkest before the dawn, right? So alchemy names these thresholds and these phases, and I find that really helpful and useful. And that's why I've started to incorporate them into the work I do in the Vital Spirit method. So as you descend into the dark night of the soul, that is the blackening, that is the breakdown, that does feel uncomfortable. This is the dissolution of what no longer serves you. If you look at the pillars of the Vital Spirit method, the gut-brain axis, the first pillar, we are recognizing and removing what no longer serves us, right? And that second pillar, there is purification happening. There is forgiveness happening for maybe the things that were not serving us best on our health journey. And this phase is really working through that stress response further, regulating and restoring healthy rhythms to the body so that we can move through the dawning of the light and the return of vitality and meaning. And we can see our hormones and our neurotransmitters thrive and communicate to us that we are safe, that we are happy. We can feel joy and compassion and curiosity. We're replenished and rejuvenated. And that does lead to the phase of the reddening or the rubedo, the embodiment, the radiance, that full expression of spirit in actual physical form. So hair, skin, nails, and spirit is when we are rebalanced and resilient, and we are radiantly glowing from the inside out because we've done that deeper work and it reflects. This is that process of individuation, of becoming who you're meant to be. The soul is remembering. And Carolyn Mace calls it the reclamation of your sacred contract. And I just love that. It's the point where psychology meets physiology and where this crucible of the body is really refining our consciousness. And midlife, menopause, burnout, depression, none of them are failures of chemistry. Yes, we might be working on our neurochemistry, but they're true initiations and invitations to transform. So this is where those archetypes are evolving. If you are the healer who overgives, you become the sage who knows when to rest. If you are the mother who puts all others before herself, you become the queen who nurtures the whole realm, including self. If you are the maiden, you become the mystic who trusts in the unseen. If you are the warrior, you become the wise woman who fights with discernment. Of course, it's not this categorical black and white, right? But I just wanted you to start to get familiar with some of the language of this transformation. From the clinical view, from looking at labs, from asking about symptoms, you are a whole system finding homeostasis through this process. And from a spiritual viewpoint, you are essentially consciousness remembering itself through your body. And I very often find that if you are walking through this dark night, if you know that this is a transformation, if you know that there are steps, if you know that there is light at the end of the tunnel, it can absolutely change your entire experience of this process. This descent often dissolves the I'm not enough, I'm too late, I'm too broken, and it makes room for true, authentic embodiment and healing. So be, do, have. Be healthy in your mind. Picture it. Remember, your mindset and your thoughts are a reflection of your beliefs. So believe that you can be healthy. Imagine it. Picture what that looks like, what it feels like, where you are, what are you doing with this health that you have. Then do the healthy things, do the rituals, practice the seeds of health that honor that innate, vital healing force within you so that you can have health. You can have that vitality that follows after alignment. And you can use your patterns as guideposts. Start recognizing your patterns. That's step one, so that you can reclaim your power as your medicine and you can root in presence. Because health isn't something that you chase, it's something that you remember. True health is the moment that biology, belief, and spirit breathe together in unison. It is the embodiment of a new truth. To be fully human and deeply healed is to live from your center and let life move through you, not against you. There's so much less resistance when you start to recognize this process. And this is what I like to think of as the quantum rhythm of the Vital Spirit method. So this is the alchemy of midlife. This is your rebirth into the second half of life. Thank you for walking this descent with me. I know this was a little bit of a heavier episode, essentially. And if this episode did speak to you on your journey, please share it with another woman who's finding her way through the dark right now. And if you'd like to explore the Vital Spirit method further, you can go to my website, drkellylivingston.com, and you can download a free vagal tone guide and you can download my free Seeds of Health journal. Those are all in the links in my Instagram bio, which is the Vital Spirit Method or Dr. Kelly Livingston, but I'm trying to direct people to the Vital Spirit Method more and more these days. And until next time, honor the rhythm within. And remember, the deeper that the depths of sorrow carve into your being, the more joy you can contain. You have the power to decide what you do with your pain. It truly can become your purpose. Thanks for being here.